and good afternoon to you all. It's lovely to be with you, and I'm glad to see your weather's pretty good, and Adelaide's starting to come good too now. For a while there, it was dreadful.
So, just ask the times.
Sorry?
I'm talking about football.
Adelaide.
Oh, I see. Well, don't talk to my husband, he's a sport fanatic. I don't know much about football at all, so I'm racehorse minded, but my husband is a staunch Port Adelaide supporter, so yes. So Crows, but we do, of course, being Adelaide Crows, of course. Go Tigers, go Tigers. Yeah.
Oh, enough!
Go Pies.
Behave yourselves.
Well, back in 1960, which I know you probably seen that, probably. I married Eric Oldfield. Now, Eric Oldfield was one of the Oldfields that owned or controlled from Marie to Birdsville, thousands and thousands of square miles. And he owned Mungarani. And shortly you'll see a film that shows you exactly where Mungarani is. 3,400 square miles the station was. So, a reasonable sized property. I was a city girl, and I spent my childhood at Semaphore Park on the beachfront, a change. I had never been to the bush before until I married, and then spent my childhood there, running free in the sandhills, because Dad had 3 acres of land. He was an owner-trainer racehorse, retired farmer, and then leased another 6 acres. So in all we had, I know I can talk acres and miles and all that too, 9 acres of land. So we had ducks and chooks and cows. We even had cows and horses because Dad was a retired farmer. And at a very young age, I was riding racehorses. It was expected of me. I hated the animals, but it was expected of me, so away I'd go. Not many girls lived in the area. And why I'm telling you this, I wasn't really what you call a typical city girl. I was probably a tomboy, to say the least. But anyway, round the property, and there's a big old home on it. We had like 17 rooms, old weatherboard house. Cousins had come down. Mum always had a mile of children running around the place. We'd be over the sandhills and on the beach. All we wore was bathers during the Christmas school holidays, and then we'd come home when we got hungry. Mum would feed us and we'd go back down the beach through the sandhills. Our feet was like camel's hide. We didn't wear shoes, and Mum wouldn't let us in the bathroom. We had to stand at the lawn, and she'd put a hose down her front and back of the bathers and into the laundry, and then she'd hand us our pyjamas, have our tea and go to bed and do the same thing again. But around the property was huge big boxthorn hedges. You all know boxthorn? And the ducks we had would get in there and lay eggs, and they'd go rotten. And me being small and 6 years younger than the boys, because I ran wild with my brother and his mates, no girls around, and I'd have to climb in there with a handkerchief, put these rotten duck's eggs on the hanky and wriggle out. Mum was always wondering why I had boxthorns in my hands, you know. Prickles would be in my hands, always digging me with a needle. Anyway, these rotten duck's eggs. And we had people that used to come down from Broken Hill, that's New South Wales, right, and to Fort Glanville, which was a short distance from where we lived. And they have camped there, summer camp, tents and things like that. And they used to have bag toilets with no top, just the bags around, 4 posts of the bags around. So we'd get down there and wait till somebody came in, and up with the rotten duck's eggs and over the top. And they'd come out, they'd be saying all sorts of things with this rotten duck's egg, looking around, and we'd be gone. So, as I say, I wasn't really the typical city girl. And then riding horses, of course, as I said, I was expected to do that. So a lot of horse riding. But in the sandhills there was always snakes, and great as find, we'd take a shovel and dig down the snake hole as far as we could see and reckon there's a snake there, get Dad to come and kill it. There was no worries about Dad killing snakes. Johnny Letts, now who knows Johnny Letts? There's a little yes, 1, yes, 2. Now Johnny Letts was the jockey that won 2 Melbourne Cups, but he also was the instigator of where the jockey or the person rode alongside, like an English gentleman, I think was the words, on the horse and interviewed the jockey. You see it, Melbourne Cup? You know, you watch TV, watch Melbourne Cup? No? No? Yes? Anyway, Johnny Letts and I used to ride down the beach together. So it was quite a thrill, and he actually worked for my dad. He's quite famous, Johnny. Probably more so in South Australia, because that's where he come from. And I was at the races one day, and John said, "Do you know, Val, I was madly in love with you?" Well, John was 6 years younger than me, and I said, "Oh, go on with you, John." No, he said, "I was." He said, "I said to your father," I said, "I really fancy your daughter, Mr. Bernard. I really like her." And my dad, I can hear to this day, he said, "Now, John, just get on with your work." And that was the end of romance that I knew nothing about. So the teenage days were pretty carefree days. We all remember the dead balls and the long white gloves and... No?
Yes.
Yes? Yeah, good. Well, somehow or other, out of this girl that was much tomboy, I had an air gun and a Shanghai the same as the boys, and climbed the trees the same as them. And somehow out of all that, my mother and father made me into a reasonable sort of young lady. And I fell in love. And I fell in love with a Catholic boy. My father was a Freemason. And high up in the Freemasonry. So, and my father said, "You'll have nothing to do with that boy because his father is a turned Catholic. And they're the worst." So here I was told that I couldn't even think about this boy. And unbeknown to me, at my cousin's wedding, because my family married into Eric's family because of the money situation and position. It was very important in those days, in the 60s or 50s actually, I'm talking now. And at 12 years of age at my cousin's wedding, it was discussed by Auntie Ida, who owned Itherden Station, and Mum and Dad Oldfield, who owned Carrie, which son I'd be best suited for. So this is all unbeknown to me. So Eric fell in love, and that was my husband-to-be, with a servant, a housemaid. And he got told by his parents, "Well, look, if you continue this relationship, you won't get a cattle station as a wedding present." Well, that sort of turned him off very quick start. So after the races one day, we were walking down the beach, and Eric said, "Well, what about it?" I said, "What do you mean, what about it?" He said, "Well, do you want it or don't you?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Get married, of course." He said, "The families think that we should." I said, "Well, I don't know." I was 20, or 19 then. And I said, "Well, I'm not too sure about that." He said, "Well, you should. Your Dad and Mum's been up to Nairoka Stud, and that's where his parents were then. And they've had great discussions on it, and that's what's expected." So I said, "Well, if that's the case, we'll better do it, I suppose." So we did. We got married. So, as I said, going to live on Mungarangi was a little bit of a difference to what my city life was. 45 miles from the nearest neighbour, you're almost correct, Kerry. 140 miles from Maree and 170 from Birdsville. So, more or less in the middle of the track, the famous Birdsville track. And when I arrived at the station, I didn't know how to cook, I didn't know how to keep house. And Eric said, well, I think we should staff the house straight away. I said, no, I'm going to learn this. Well, I'd worked in an office. Firstly, I rode horses for Dad in the morning, and then worked in an office, and then I was an usherette in the theatres down at Semaphore. So I didn't have time to do housework. Mum had a housekeeper, so I mean, she did all that. But I said, no, I was 20 then. I thought, you know, I've got to be able to tell the girls what to do, and the only way I can do that is do it myself. Well, I absolutely got worn out. I thought you had to clean a house every day. And my husband was a pretty virile young fellow, and he didn't think much of that idea at all. So anyway, we packed up and went down to Adelaide, and I got a few housemaids and tried to get a cook, but we couldn't get one, which meant I had to do the cooking. Well, because of the mileage in the property, there was no such thing as fences. If you put fences on it, the sand would blow over it and you wouldn't find the fences anyway. So it was all done with mustering, and musters were called on a regular basis. So you could be out 3 weeks, 6 weeks is the longest they'd be out. They lived in a swag. You've all seen cowboy films, big 10-gallon hats, high heel boots, and swags on the back of the horses. Well, that's what they did. And they mustered the cattle. They'd go out with a plant of 100 horses. And because they were only grass-fed, so they didn't last long, so they'd let them ride them. But every time they got on a horse, of course they had to almost break it in again. But the horse tailor's job was to feed the men. But for the first 3 days, because they were moving their camp, they couldn't have the horse tailor working. So the station wife or the cook had to cook for them and send out enough food for 3 days. And then this food was all put in pack saddles on the sides of the horse. I remember seeing them going over the sandhill, the whips cracking and the flapping of the pack going up the hills, up the sandhills. So you'd make tarts, you'd make bread, you'd cook a whole shoulder of bullock, because we killed our own meat. No such thing as going down to the corner shop, and no such thing as eating anything else but meat and an occasional rabbit. You had bullock killed once a fortnight. So you cooked all this up, and tarts, you'd make like 30 tarts. You put anything you could in them. Breadcrumbs with a bit of treacle on them, and you made your own pastry. One day the camp was quite close, and we didn't have a four-wheel drive then. We had a car. As I said, everything was done on horseback. So I went out to the camp, and there was my tarts and billy tea. I quite like billy tea. So I said, I'll have a cup of billy tea. So I sat down, well, try my tart. Well, hell, I nearly broke my teeth. It was dreadful. Mum had armed me with a green and gold cookbook. None of you have a cookbook? No, not green and gold. Very famous, green and gold. Oh my gosh. What one? Australian Woman's Weekly?
GWA.
Right, yeah, I know that one too. Didn't have any of them. Green and gold, and I went to Woodville High School, and I had a Woodville High School cookbook. So I had followed the recipe for the pastry, but I'd used plain flour instead of self-raising. And it ended up like bits of cardboard. So my cooking wasn't what you kind of call a great success. So the bush, as far as cooking and all that sort of thing, making bread, I had to learn how to make bread. Many a plastic bucket was melted alongside the stove, the wood stove. I had a wood stove. And our only real communication with the outside world, because you couldn't even listen to a radio, because we had a 60-foot tower for the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and the radios would just cut in. You might have 2 minutes the ABC and 4 minutes of somebody yabbering in Chinese, because it'd pick up everything. So you gave it away as a bad job. So our only communication with the outside world was the Royal Flying Doctor. And that was 3 times a day. The actual space cut out at 5 o'clock at night and didn't resume until 8 o'clock the next morning. The first part of if you did get sick, you would have had me to look after you on the station, and I wasn't a nurse either, I might tell you. Not a cook, not a nurse. But when they called from Port Augusta, we'd call medicals first. Now, for instance, Lynn here. If she was sick on the station, she'd have to come and sit alongside me on the wireless, and the doctor would say, fortunately, I did a first aid course and a home nursing course. I'd take her temperature. She'd say, well, my stomach's not too good, and I'd poke you around there a bit and tell the doctor what it is, and he'd say, well, listen, you go out to your medicine chest and you get out injection so-and-so, so-and-so, and you give it to her. So then I'd ask Lynn to come in with me, drop your DAX and drop the rest of it, and I'd very carefully honour her. You all got good memory, good vision of all this, good vision. Then you'd have on the right-hand buttock a cross, which I used to do with a biro, and I knew you put the injection in the top right-hand corner. How many doctors have we got here? How many retired doctors? None. So anyway, wasn't there? So that's what would happen, and hopefully the patient would survive. And then we'd call the big telegrams. On my 21st birthday, I sat picking up the telegrams and crying my eyes out because I had no friends, no family, and I was sitting up there on my own. The loneliness was terrible, particularly when the men went out to camp and I didn't have any housemates or any companion help, nothing. I was there completely on my own for 3 weeks at one stage because I was feeding a potty calf. You know what a potty calf is?
Sure, of course we do.
Okay.
All done it.
All done it? So I was feeding one of those. Well, potty, for those who don't know, it's motherless calves. Okay? So, you know, that the telegrams would come in and then we'd have our cockatoo session. Remembering we were 45 miles from the nearest neighbour and we were all related. So Auntie Ida would call in, which you'll see shortly on the film. 8 Alex in Easter dinner calling 8 double P to Mum Granny, and I'd answer, but I'd never know, you know, we didn't have any news. Not like you people here today, you go away and say, oh, that was that girl from the bush, she spoke. You had nothing to talk about. Absolutely nothing. The best was which way the wind was blowing, and I didn't ever damn well know which way the wind was blowing anyway, so I'd make it up. But our life was, we never went out, we never did anything. That was it. And so living on the station, probably the loneliness was the thing that really got you, the isolation. We were lucky to see one car every 3 or 4 days. The Royal Flying Doctor had a night landing at Mungarani. Most unusual, because we lit the aerodrome with bonfires, 4 bonfires, a car, two vehicles, and a motorbike to get the plane down. And the last metre is a sheer drop down. So they don't know. And it's on red gibbers, red stones. And they had white tyres. That was it. And we had one of the children's governesses that we had there, she was bitten by a snake. And I had to offside for her because there wasn't any other woman on the station, and if ever anybody suffered, it was that poor girl. I can still hear her cries because her blood pressure built up to such an extent that when we put the drip into it, the doctor tried to get it in, it'd blow it out. And I said, can I wash her, or there was blood going everywhere, can I wash her before she gets on the flight? And he said, no, within a very short time, she'll be gone. But fortunately, I should say, not unfortunately, fortunately, she did live, but was in a coma for 3 days. So I didn't like snakes then, and I even like them worse now. But it's just one of the things that you come across. Another guy came in one day and he had a towel wrapped around his hand. And he said, "Oh, Val, can you do something about this?" And he took it off and I nearly fainted. It was his thumb was just hanging. He'd got it caught up in a concrete mixer. So as luck happened, the doctor was doing the data and flew over. And so with torchlight, because the batteries, that's the other thing, we had 32 volt power, and often that wouldn't work, and I talk about in the book how you had to turn the big handle to get it going, and when the men was away, it was a really ordeal. But so I couldn't get it going, and so with the torchlight, I held the torch while he stitched back on as best he could before he took him away. So, you know, they're the emergencies that come up on a station such as we had. You accept life, which is a shame with the younger ones today, that they don't accept life more readily than what we did, and their outlook on life, and our outlook on life. Even, I suppose, compared to city people, was totally different. Like, you dealt with emergencies as they came up. And I remember one guy, he'd actually been bitten by a snake on his thumb. He was chopping wood. So he said, "Not a worry, Val." He said, "I put it on the block and chopped the thumb off." That fixed it up. But that's the attitude. We may think that's awful, but when you've got life, something like you're saving a life, that's how he thought of saving his life, because he knew he wouldn't get any help. The other thing that was the most important thing was mail day. Every fortnight, if we were lucky, we got mail. Do you know Tom Cruise? Not the film star, the famous mailman. Now, Tom was a perfect gentleman. He'd come to the door with my mail bag. He said, "Mrs. Oldfield, I have some mail for you." So, "Well, that's very kind of you, Tom." And Tom bought everything. In the summer, he bought a box of fruit and veg from Adelaide. You took it out and you threw it in the fowl yard and picked out what you could out of it, because it'd all be rotten. We didn't have any refrigeration on the trucks, nothing like that. But Tom would come to the door with our mail. And one day I said to him, "Tom," because he always addressed me as Mrs. Oldfield, "Mrs. Oldfield, I have the mail for you." I said, "Tom, do you think it possible to call me Val?" He said, "Yes, Mrs. Oldfield." So I gave up after that. But Tom was a remarkable man. He went through floods, drought, everything you could possibly think of. But that truck, sometimes it took a month. Like when you got the mail, you tipped it out on the floor and you put it in order as best you could. We got two Sunday mails, one each week for the fortnight. But when you got a month of mail, you had 4. So that's that, and you worked out the news. Because remember, you couldn't listen to any news. The only thing we had was records. We listened to a bit of music and record, and we played cards. So, this mail was so important to get, and from our family, or from my family, from my friends, So Tom Cruise was actually a remarkable man. In the Birdwood Museum in South Australia, they have a full display. If ever you go to Adelaide, do go and see it. And I'm very proud to say that my book is alongside Tom Cruise's in that museum. And the other thing that I'm very proud of is that it's now in the Stockmen's Hall of Fame, which again. Now today, these books, what I've managed to bring between Dennis and I in our suitcases, there's not many there, but there will be part proceeds done to the Royal Flying Doctor, because it's very close to my heart and to Dennis. We're both volunteers for the Royal Flying Doctor, often give talks for them. So, any purchases made, there will be part proceeds to them. So I'm going to ask someone, I don't know where he's gone, Bill, to put the film on. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know how to work these. Now, it was made in 1956 and won awards. It was a Shell film. It was so hot when they made it that the actual talking part of it melted and they had to redo it with actors. Now this here, we haven't got any sound, I don't think, Kerry. But it tells the story of Tom Cruise, and you'll see, yeah. Oh, here we go. We've got the right man now. Not saying you're not right. I found last night.
Yeah, he's good. He's better. He's the right man. Yeah.
They got the sound right last night. But it'll just show you the track. That's the track going through there now. We've got to go back to the beginning, I think, Bill. But anyway, as I was saying, it was made for Shell and it won a lot of awards, but this is very much cut around. Enjoy.
Disappearing into the mirage, over the edge of the world, the Birdsville track, where prehistoric animals, Diprotodon and Brontosaurus, dead 1 million years, lie unburied, and mingle now their bones with the horse, the camel, and the white man. Part of a vanishing race, the Australian Aborigine, who travelled up and down for centuries, trading ochre and patchouli from the south for the black stone axe of the north. Where the explorers, Sturgeon Air, came in search of an inland sea, 12 million years too late. At last we climbed the rocky outcrop, hoping to see blue water and white-crested waves. The cheerless sight closed all my dreams. The horizon was one unbroken level, a vast unending plain that disappeared in a haze of heat. I named the hill Mount Hopeless. The ocean has gone. Only the fish and shells remain, cast in stone. Fossils defying time and the sun to mark the ancient shore. After the explorers came the settlers, prospectors, drovers defying loneliness, droughts, the dust storms, driving their cattle 1,000 miles from the pastures of the north to the markets of the south. They called it the Never Never Country, the back of beyond, land of dry rivers, the Birdsville track. Made by the bare black feet of desert tribesmen, camel pads and sweating pack horses, it echoes now to a man and his truck, a carrier called Cruise. I still there, Penny? Hi there, Penny. How you doing?
Okay.
Our passenger's still with us.
Can't take that bloke off. He's like a flea and a kangaroo. Which way you going now? Over the sandhill or across the creek?
Over the top. Supplies and mail for lonely cattle stations. Stations measured by thousands of miles, where the man living 100 miles away is your neighbour. And your only link with the outside world is Her Majesty's Royal Mail, Tom Cruise. A carrier called Cruise. Every fortnight fighting the sand 700 miles to Birdsville and back. Every fortnight the story begins. Where the world ends in a shield of purple stone, engaged in its long war against the sun, here men have grown the ragged flower of a town, Mari. Little town of tin huddling on the edge of the desert, where the great cattle mobs from the north end their weary 1,000-mile trek in the hot iron trucks in the railway yards. corrugated iron town shimmering in the corrugated air. The retreat of men and women from the immensity of sand. White men, black men, Afghan. Coming up from Adelaide, 600 miles into Australia, bringing stores and mail for drovers on the Birdsville train, and the people back and beyond. Hi there, Henry!
Right, Tom. All aboard, please. All aboard.
Malka! Clifton Hills! Eat the dinner! That's all, Henry! Let's go. Miles to Birdsville from Marie. Man makes us a look across this country that has no flowers but the whitening bones of long-dead cattle. Life, if it hopes to breathe, must crawl in the shade of a stone. All tastes like dust in the mouth. All strikes like iron in the mouth. Queensland mob, 2 months on the track, and the silence wakes to the crack and cry of drovers. Then all falls still again. Only the shimmering heat waves glare. The hot iron plain lies stony, oceans bare. Eat the dinner, a cattle station back of beyond. A handful of white people, a few native stockmen ruling 1,000 square miles of Australia. Raising cattle and horses on spinnifex and saltbush. Shut in by a glittering wall of mirage. An empire on the bare stones. Seeming all alone on earth, until radio breaks the silence with the voices of their natives.
Angel accept the dinner calling, Cowrie. Hello, Cowrie. Wonder how you about this morning, Dora? I'll have a listen for you. Over.
Cowrie to eat a dinner? Cowrie to eat a dinner? Morning, Ida. How are you this morning? We're wondering if you've had any word about Tom. Over.
Angel accept your dinner replying to Cowrie. Okay, Dora, okay. Yes, about Tom. I was just speaking to Mrs. Bell a moment ago at Dalton Inner. She heard Tom is travelling. Okay. And he should be here in a few moments. Dora, did you have that dreadful dust storm last night? Over.
Cowrie to eat a dinner? All okay, Ida. Good to hear about Tom. No, we didn't get any dust. Bill said you might be getting some. He said he can tell by the birds or something. They all look the same to me. Did you hear about young Georgie Wilson having the measles? I heard Mrs. Thomas telling Mrs. Brown. She said she heard Mrs. Wilson say he was just about pimples all over. They make a change from beef all the time. How's the branding going? Over.
Angel accepts you dinner replying to Cowrie. All okay, Dora. That'll be nice for you going down to the fish hole. We're going down to the branding after Tom's been. They're doing it down at the dead man. Here comes Ollie. Tom now. Tom is coming now, daughter. I've got to go and make the kettle boil. I'll give you a call at 1:45. Give you a call at 1:45 and give you all the news. Cheerio for now, daughter. Cheerio.
Hello, Jim.
Hello, Tom. What sort of a trip are you having?
Not bad. No trouble.
How's the feed down below?
Still holding. The big wind cut it about a lot last week.
I suppose it would. How about a cup of tea?
Good. Dingoes in the face.
We're on 6 cars for the last 6 nights. I came outside this morning and there's one standing right in front of me in the middle of the yard. Cheek as you make them.
Where'd you camp last night, Henry? Or the other side, Kanawakadana. By the dead Phoenix. Hey, I'm Sandy. Present from Santa Claus.
Right, Alexi, the dinner calling Malka. He's the dinner calling Malka. Tom has just left. Tom has just left. Expect to get to the Cooper tonight. Do the crossing tomorrow. And do the crossing tomorrow. He's the dinner calling Malka.
Now I've got a microphone, so I hope you enjoyed that bit of a glimpse of the stations. And the bush wasn't the dust, the dirt, the trees so much as the actual characters and what happens that you never think could possibly happen. Bill Guider was a drover and he had a glass eye, and he'd very carefully take this glass eye out and put it on a post. And we had a lot of Aboriginal stockmen. And he had a lot working for him. And he'd say, now, you don't work, I'm going into Maree, but my eye will be on you. And I will know. So they worked very well. But that was a bush, that was the bush. During the drought, we moved cattle to Bultuckney, which again you'll see shortly. I got sick of being on the station on my own. I was getting potty cows because the cows were dying like flies and the cows were left so Eric could bring them home. I'd give him rations and he'd go back, and this went on for over 12 months. And we lost over 1,000 odd head of cattle down there. The dam would be green with dead dingoes, because we laid dingo baits as well. And the men would go in and take their water out of that dam and, as I said, be green. Anchor cordial, raspberry cordial. If any of you go and worry about water, get yourself a bottle of raspberry cordial, because it purifies anything, including bad water, because that's what they lived on. But the drought is one of the worst things I think you could ever experience. At home we had over 90 horses die around the homestead, and one night this horse was continually hitting its head on the ground. And I said to Eric, for God's sake, get a rifle and go and shoot it. I can't stand it any longer. And he said, I can't, Val. He said, it's one of my favourites. And drought is a terrible, terrible thing. So shortly you will see just a few photos of that. And at Bultuckney we used to collect squash bush and pile it up, bring it in for the cattle to eat. And it was full of water, so they didn't have to go too far, which helped when they're so weak. You do crazy things when you're young and not thinking about things. And people have things I've known for, reputations and all the rest of it. But I'm known in the bush for the lady who blew a toilet up. I didn't get this for that, because it all happened, well, one thing after another. But do you all know a long drop toilet? Yes. Everybody knows that. For those who don't, there's a hole in the ground with a toilet on top and some wires and posts that hold the toilet stable. So Rita, my housemaid, one of my housemates, came in and said, Mrs. I always called me Mrs., which made me feel quite old. That was better. There's bugs in this toilet. Because we had a bit of a flash one by the house, a septic tank. So, that's okay. So, went into the storeroom. Dad used shell tops, kill bugs. Oh, you get some shell. No, none there. A bucket of Kira, that will do it. No. Pump, 44-gallon drum. No. Bucket of petrol, that'll do it. And I filled this bucket up. And I can remember walking over, and Miss Ellie, the children's governess, was hanging her dainties out in the line. And she said, where are you going? Told her. She said, oh, over I went, tipped the bucket down the toilet. And her and Eric's cousin shared this toilet. And there was some books, a box of matches and a candle. Now you couldn't resist that, could you? And I remember lighting this book and holding it there, and there was this mighty roar, and flames shot out, I'm not kidding, this high, up to the ceiling. There wasn't any cobwebs left, nor any bugs. But I'd blown all the dirt right around the whole toilet, and I had to actually jump out. So walking back, Miss Ellie said, what was that dreadful noise? And I told her. She said, oh, thank God you lit it, Mrs. Because she said I used to smoke cigarettes and drop the butts down the hill. So, but imagine how embarrassing it would have been to be at my funeral and they say, how did Val die? Well, she blew herself up in a dunning. So, anyway, that's just a glimpse of the bush. For those who buy the book, I say, well, I hope you enjoy it very much, because it took me 4 years with Ashley Mullett helping, because I say he was supposed to write it, but lots of times I wrote it. And a lot of tears and worry about that book, so hope you enjoy it. For those who don't buy it, well, you missed out, didn't you? But anyway, all the best to you all. And is there any questions? Oh, yes. Yes, we do. Thank you, Kerry. See,
I know. We're the two of us, we're a team.
We're a team. Sorry, you've got one lot to go. One short film. I'll try and explain it as we go along.
Sun's up and shining.
That's my dad down on the beach.
On that old bush mountain trail.
That's Dad and I riding through the sand hills.
I've got a feeling in my heartstrings.
That's my first boyfriend. Dennis isn't jealous at all. We go and stay with him.
Oh,
That good-looking bird there is me at 17. That's Dad and I on our horses. That's Mum Granny in the 1800s. It's quite a big town actually. Racetrack, all sorts there. Eric chopping wood. This is a gymkhana in Maori, and Eric's on the right. This is my two children, Mum, Miss Ellie and Eric. This is Brandy and Granny. This is a River Derwent, just near the homestead. That's in flood. This is a wildflowers, 5 inches of rain, but when it rained there was wildflowers everywhere. Miles of them. It's one of the housemaids. The flies are bad. We're bogged. On the right is Bill Ryder with a glass eye. this artesian
The
board.
sun is descending.
Mum and Dad with Susan and myself.
In a
This is Eric
blaze
Colt
of
breaking.
crimson gold. Down in
This is
the
the
valley,
family.
the mountain men rally, recounting the good times.
This is my pet dog Skipper.
Stirring the embers, a bushman
Feeding potty calves.
wonderful day.
Oh, well, that way too, Mum and
When
Dad.
the mountains were ringing
Susan.
with laughter and singing, a light
This is the squash bush I was telling you about.
Storm clouds are
This is
massing,
my first glimpse of
light
Mangarani.
is flashing, a fireball lights up the sky.
This is the cemetery at Mangarani.
That clap of thunder, I wake from my slumber.
Driving cattle on the track.
Traffic in Sydney goes by.
Buck jumping.
Must have been dozing, my fantasies roving.
This is Rita I was telling you about.
Rippling
The
stream.
2 children.
I'm going back down that old beaten track to the homestead home of dreams.
This is a horse
If I want
trailer.
to go back, I'll just take
This is on the sandhill at Mangarani, Susan with my hat. It's on the front cover of the book. This is getting the horses to go across the Coopers. Eric and Susan riding. It's my 3 children. My pet Coffee and Dog.
Shining, and I'm up and riding on that old bush mountain track. I've got a
Fishing on the Coopers.
in my heart.
We used to tie Martin up to the tree with a big rope.
Country's calling me back.
This is the 2 that I told you about. 2 men. This is again the River Derwent and flood. My first potty calf I read.
Back in the saddle, muster and cattle.
This is Miss Stevenson, one of the governesses with the children.
My dreams.
And the Milo.
above me, an eagle is flying with the
Auntie Ida fishing. There you see the swags in the foreground. And that's one of the governesses behind there. First glimpse of Mangarani again.
Where are the riders, those reckless
The children bathing at Bultakanini.
One shared my hopes and schemes. In young idle fancy, we be riding with Clancy.
This is a caravan I spent 6 weeks in. It was so hot the crows dropped out of the trees dead. This is Marie. This is fishing. This is my marlin I caught in Bali.
The sun is descending, another day ending in a blaze of crimson gold.
Working with the elderly and disabled at
Down
Sunhouse
in the
Homes.
valley, the mountain men rally, recounting
Working on board P&O ships.
stirring the embers of
My 3 children.
the wonderful days now gone, when the
My youngest and
mountains
eldest
were
getting their
ringing
degrees.
with laughter and singing, a life
My
full
3
of
children.
memories and song. Storm clouds are massing,
My youngest son.
lightning is flashing, a fireball lights up the sky.
My daughter Susan.
And that clap of thunder, I wake from my slumber as the roar of the traffic in Sydney go by. Must have been dozing, my fantasies roving. Here